In this video, we're going to talk about how you can tell the difference between a high-quality business buying prospect and a low-quality buying prospect or a non-prospect, and how you can do it quickly so that you don't waste any of your time and your effort and your emotion dealing with people who can't or won't ever buy your business. Now, in our last video, we discussed the fact that only about 10% of the people who respond to business for sale ads or who call a broker about buying a business actually do, in fact, wind up buying a business. And we talked about the fact that what drives these 10%ers who do buy is the dream of owning a business and controlling their own destiny. And that dream is more important than money, because buying and running a business is hard work and there's a lot of risk involved. And if all somebody is motivated by is money, well, there are a lot of easier ways and safer ways to do that. And most of the people who are motivated solely by money stay in their job or they go find another job. Since the 10%ers who are focused on and motivated by completely different things than the 90%, they truly do stand out in the crowd. They think, they talk, they act differently than the 90%. So if you know what to look for, it's easy to tell them apart. And once you can do that, well, then you can dedicate all of your time to buyers who you know are truly serious and capable of buying your business. So let's look at the key traits and the key behaviors that separate the 10% from the 90%. Now, as I said just a second ago, the 90%ers focused almost exclusively on money. If someone responds to your business for sale ad and all they want to know is how much money you made last year or how much money you're going to make this year, and that's all they care about, well, that's not a good sign. The 10%ers, they do focus on money. I'm not saying that's not important, but they're also interested and motivated by the dream, the idea, the challenge of being in business for themselves. They're often bored or burnt out in their corporate job, and they're looking for something that offers them more than a paycheck. They're looking for an opportunity, and they will be curious not just about how much money the business makes, but how the business works, how the industry works. And they'll ask you intelligent questions about your business and about the industry at large. Whereas the 90%ers, what they really want is an easy way to make money. And somebody probably told them at some point, well, you got to own your own business. But they're really not interested in building a business or expanding a business. They're looking for a turnkey business that they can put on cruise control. They have this expectation that they can walk in from day one, not putting any of their own money at risk, and start making money for themselves. So they're put off by anything that's slightly negative about the business or the actual truth of the hours and the risk that it takes to run a business. The 10%ers, what they're really looking for is a business that's already good, but that with hard work and dedication, they can make better or that they can make great. They're excited about the idea of taking a business and putting their own stamp on it and expanding it and growing it, something that they can be proud of. And so they're interested in where the business can go from here. And again, that leads them to behave completely differently from the person who's just looking for a way to make money. But the most common thing and the quickest way that you can tell a 90%er from a 10%er is that the 90%ers expect, they even demand to see detailed information about you and about your business without them giving you any information about them. This is the surest sign that the person doesn't understand the reality and the seriousness of the situation. And you're going to find out that if you don't have a way to collect information up front on buyers, you're going to wind up dealing with a lot of unreasonable and unrealistic people who are never going to buy a business. Because a lot of the 90%ers think that it's reasonable to request from you detailed personal information without them telling you anything about themselves. And this letter or email is really not an exaggeration. This is the kind of thing you get from people all the time. And if you don't have any way to weed these people out, to get information about them up front before they send you these kinds of emails, then you're going to have to deal with these people who are unrealistic, uneducated about buying a business. And when you see this sort of attitude in people that I want to know everything about you, and if I like it, then I'll tell you a little something about myself, that's a sure sign that that person is never going to buy a business because they haven't done any research. They don't understand what it takes to buy a business. They're looking for easy money. The 10%ers, on the other hand, they are educated. They do understand the reality. They understand your need for confidentiality. They're the exact opposite in their behaviors and their attitudes and their approach from the 90%. They're realistic. They're respectful of your need for confidentiality. They understand that you are sharing very sensitive personal information about your finances and about your business, and they don't resist your efforts to learn about them first. And I think that this is the best way that we could describe the 90%ers and the way that they behave, is that they want to negotiate with reality. They want to negotiate what reality is. They want you to lend them money. They want you to make guarantees. The 90%ers want you to give them all the information they want without telling you anything about them. And you don't want to waste your time trying to turn these 90%ers into 10%ers. It can't be done. You can't turn water into wine, and you'll waste a lot of time if you try. And as we stated in other videos, there are serious qualifications to buying a business, but there are no qualifications for responding to a business for sale ad. That's why it's important to always be on the lookout for more qualified prospects, so that you're never tempted to overlook a prospect's shortcomings, which is what we tend to do if we only have one prospect. So the more prospects that you find, the more honest you can be about how qualified each prospect is. Having one prospect in reality is like having none, since you put all your hopes, you pin all of your hopes and dreams on that one person, and you have to accept whatever demands they make or whatever shortcomings they have because you haven't developed any alternatives. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the difference between the 90% and the 10% and how a good prospect behaves versus how a bad prospect behaves. Now, let's look at the single biggest way that you can separate the 10% from the 90%. This literally is where the rubber meets the road. Now, the good news is that low-quality prospects will identify themselves very quickly and very clearly. And that will happen when you ask them to sign a confidentiality agreement and submit a resume or some kind of background statement, which seems like a very simple request, but you'll be amazed at the number of people who think that that's unreasonable. And if they do, that's a sign that they're not serious, that they have not educated themselves on the buying process. Believe it or not, people really do get offended when you ask them, are they qualified? Do they have the money? But that's okay, because it gives you a clear sign early on that this person isn't worth your time. So to protect yourself and to protect your time, you absolutely must require that every prospect sign a confidentiality agreement up front, and they must be willing to give you at least some basic information on their qualifications and their readiness to buy before you give them any information beyond what's in your public advertisement. Now, at thebizseller.com, we require all buyers to fill out a buyer background statement, and this is the information that we ask for. Name, and I put first and last in there because people will, like in that anonymous comment slide I showed you a minute ago, people literally will just give you their first name and their email address and expect you to send them documents about your business. But you need to know their email address and their phone number because you want to be able to communicate with them at different times through both of those means. Money questions. You want to know what kind of price range they're looking at. It's perfectly fine if someone is, interested in a business somewhere around the $100,000 range. But if they are, and you want $300,000 for your business, that person's not going to be a good prospect for you. The down payment, their credit worthiness. Do they have any other financial partners? Do they have a partner, a spouse? You want to know this because you want to get all of the decision makers in on the communications early. And the thing with down payment is that's really very important because most businesses come down to a negotiation over down payment. And if the person doesn't have enough cash available to comfortably meet what you're looking for in a down payment, they're not going to be a good prospect, because not only do they need the down payment that you're requesting, but they need to have living expenses and some money as a cushion to have in addition to the down payment. So you want to know how much down payment in cash they have available or can get a hold of in a short period of time, because if they're nowhere close to what you want, they can't buy the business. The other questions you want to know is how soon are they looking to buy? A lot of people literally, they're just starting out doing the research. They may literally be years down the road before they want to buy a business. If you find that out up front, you can eliminate them. And how close means how close in miles, in proximity. With the internet, it's easy for people to contact you from anywhere. And if you don't know where they are and how willing they are to move, you could be talking to a lot of people who are just using you for research. So you want to ask them, how close to your home does the business need to be? Are you willing to relocate? For most small service businesses and small retail stores, there's no reason for someone to relocate because there are similar type businesses in every town. And then the last thing that you want to know is about their experience. The best prospects already have a resume written up. What I have found in the past year or two is that a lot of the best prospects will all also volunteer a link to their profile on LinkedIn.com, which, if you're not familiar with it, that's a professional a site for people to meet other professionals in their area of expertise. And so the more they're willing to tell you, and the more that information they already have prepared in the form of a resume or a LinkedIn profile, that tells you a lot about how professional they are. So you definitely want to ask them what they've been doing with their careers. And the more forthcoming they are with information, the more serious and prepared they are. Now, as I said earlier, a lot of people will resist you trying to get any information from them. And that is completely unrealistic and completely unacceptable if they're not willing to tell you who they are, where they live, how much money they have, how soon they are willing to buy. Any viable, professional, and reasonable candidate should be perfectly agreeable with you requesting this information for them. If they're not, then they don't understand how buying and selling a business works. And early on in the process, you're going to find that people are on their best behavior. So if they're not reasonable and respectful of your privacy now, they're not going to become more reasonable and more professional as you get into the process. So asking them for information on themselves is a great way to weed out the people who are just completely unrealistic. And usually then you're left with people who are at least viable candidates. They may not wind up owning your business, but they're a reasonable candidate. And that's all you want to do in the first communication with a buying prospect. Now, in our next video, we're going to talk about, once you've weeded out the non-prospects or the bad prospects for the few good ones, the reality is, if they're qualified to buy your business, they're qualified to buy a lot of other businesses. And so you want to be able to convince and motivate that best qualified buyer to choose your business over all the other businesses that are out there for sale that they are also qualified to buy. So that we will talk about in our next video, and I'll see you then.